Imagine being accused of something you didn't do, especially when you're an elderly woman, alone and vulnerable. This is exactly what happened to Miss Clara, a 78-year-old grandmother who was wrongfully accused of stealing from a local store. The community was shocked, her family was heartbroken, and Miss Clara's life seemed to fall apart in the blink of an eye. But then, just when everything seemed lost, her son made a move that no one expected, a move that would completely flip the situation on its head. What he uncovered next would leave everyone questioning the truth and just how far people are willing to go to protect the ones they love. Stay tuned as we dive into a story of injustice, surprise, and the power of family. You won't believe how it all unfolds. Clara had always been a woman of quiet dignity. Living alone in a modest house on the outskirts of town, she spent her days tending to her garden and baking treats for the neighbors. Everyone knew her as a kind, generous soul. So when she was accused of stealing expensive jewelry from a local boutique, it shocked the entire community. Surveillance footage showed a woman of her stature near the scene, but the store manager insisted Clara was the one who swiped the items. The police seemed ready to close the case, but her son Michael wasn't convinced. A successful lawyer who had always been protective of his mother, he immediately began investigating. He found strange inconsistencies in the footage, and it seemed someone had been trying to frame Clara. As he dug deeper, he uncovered a tangled web of secrets that pointed to a much darker plot than anyone had imagined. As Michael dug deeper into the investigation, things didn't add up. The surveillance footage, which was supposed to be clear proof, looked manipulated. He reached out to a trusted friend in tech who confirmed the timestamps had been altered. But who would go to such lengths to set his mother up? Michael's suspicions grew, and he started looking into the boutique's owner, a man named Gregory Wells. Wells was known for his charming demeanor, but something about him didn't sit right with Michael. Clara had visited the store only once or twice, always looking for small gifts or trinkets, so why was she suddenly the target? At the same time, Clara's neighbors started to talk. Some had noticed odd behavior from the boutique's staff, while others mentioned seeing a well-dressed woman in a hurry, leaving the store the day of the alleged theft. But no one had thought much of it, until now. Could someone have been using Clara as a decoy? With each new piece of information, the puzzle became more complex. Michael had a gut feeling that someone was manipulating the whole situation, but who? And why? The answer seemed just out of reach, as if the truth was buried beneath layers of deception, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover it. The deeper Michael went, the more questions he had, but the answers remained elusive. Every lead seemed to circle back to one person, Gregory Wells. There were rumors that he had fallen into financial trouble recently, and his boutique, once a thriving business, was now struggling. Was he desperate enough to frame an innocent woman to cover up his debts? Michael couldn't shake the thought. But something didn't sit right about this theory. It was too simple, too obvious. Then, one evening, as Michael sat in his office, poring over new evidence, he received an anonymous tip. The caller's voice was distorted, but the message was clear. Check the security footage again. You're looking in the wrong direction. Michael's heart raced. Was someone trying to help him, or was this another part of the game? He immediately revisited the footage with fresh eyes. That's when he noticed it, subtle details that he'd missed before. A shadow in the background. A hand that didn't belong to his mother, but to someone else entirely. The next morning, Michael met with his mother. Clara, as frail as she seemed, had a fire in her eyes. She'd started to notice things too. Things about the day of the theft that didn't make sense. A strange woman had approached her in the store, offering unsolicited help when Clara had been looking for a necklace for her granddaughter. Could this mysterious woman be the key? With the pieces finally starting to fall into place, Michael knew he was on the verge of something big. But just as the investigation reached its boiling point, he was confronted by an unexpected threat. A mysterious figure showed up at his office, warning him to drop the case or face consequences. Whoever was behind this was not going to let the truth come out without a fight. Now, with everything on the line, Michael had to decide how far he was willing to go to protect his mother and expose the dangerous secrets that had been hidden for far too long. As Michael walked out of his office, the weight of the threat hung over him. The shadowy figure had been clear. Drop the case, or there would be consequences. But Michael's resolve only hardened. He couldn't let his mother, who had already suffered so much, take the fall for a crime she didn't commit. His phone rang again, and this time, it was an unexpected call from a private investigator he had hired on the side. The investigator's voice was tight, anxious. "I found something, Michael. Something big. You need to meet me now." Michael's pulse quickened as he made his way to the rendezvous point. He hadn't expected the investigator to uncover much, but when they sat down in the dimly lit diner, the truth began to unravel in a way Michael never anticipated. The investigator handed him a stack of documents. Among them were records showing a series of transactions between Gregory Wells and a mysterious offshore account. Wells wasn't just struggling financially, he was involved in something far darker, something that connected him to a web of illegal activities far beyond petty theft. But as Michael processed the new information, his stomach dropped. The investigator hesitated before speaking again. "There's more. Clara isn't the first target. In fact, she was specifically chosen. This goes much deeper than a single robbery." The investigator revealed that Clara's name had been linked to an earlier, unsolved case involving stolen goods, something that had been buried in the archives for years. The more Michael learned, the clearer it became. Someone had been watching Clara for a long time, waiting for the right moment to frame her. Before Michael could react, a muffled noise came from the back of the diner. He turned sharply, his instincts kicking in. The investigator's eyes widened, and in that instant, Michael realized that he had walked into a trap. The doors to the diner slammed shut, and the tension in the room escalated as figures appeared in the shadows, closing in. Suddenly, Michael was no longer just trying to clear his mother's name. He was fighting for his own survival. As the walls seemed to close in, one thing became clear. The stakes had just been raised in ways Michael couldn't have imagined. As Michael's heart raced, the tension in the diner reached a boiling point. The figures in the shadows were closing in, their intentions clear. He had only seconds to act. With no time to think, Michael lunged for the door, narrowly dodging a man who grabbed at his coat. The investigator, now frozen in place, seemed too terrified to move. Michael pushed through the exit, his breath ragged, and dashed into the alley. But as Clara stepped forward, ready to confront Gregory for the last time, the final twist of fate arrived. From the shadows emerged another figure, someone Michael had never expected to see. It was the investigator, but now he was pointing a gun directly at Clara. "You don't understand, Michael," the investigator said, his voice cold. "None of this was ever about Gregory Wells. It was about you." The true mastermind was closer than anyone had realized, and the game was far from over. As the story reached its heart-pounding climax, Michael faced the unimaginable. The person he thought was his ally, the one helping him to uncover the truth, had been pulling the strings all along. And now, everything was at risk. The investigator's revelation hit Michael like a punch to the gut. As the man stepped forward, the gun aimed directly at Clara, Michael's world seemed to shatter. But before he could act, the truth finally surfaced. The investigator revealed that he was part of a larger conspiracy to frame both Clara and Michael. Gregory Wells had been a pawn in a much bigger operation, one that had targeted their family from the beginning. The investigator's role had been to manipulate Michael into investigating, while orchestrating the downfall of Clara and anyone close to her. In a final moment of clarity, Michael lunged at the investigator, knocking the gun